So I want to talk about weaponized misandry, all right, and preconceived notions, all right. So, like for example, all right, let's talk for example common double standards when it comes down to household roles, all right. So I love how when trying to argue with the guardianship and the incompetence that claim, how one of the things that was claimed was I apparently, quote unquote, couldn't fry an egg if my life depended on it. All right? Now, the funny thing is, that statement being made by somebody who perpetually and continually will do anything and everything possible to try to chase me out of the kitchen to keep me from cooking for myself. All right? Because, ultimately, when you have people with dietary restrictions, ultimately acting like that's the standard and that's what needs to be the standard. It's like, no, I'm fully capable of being able to make my own meals. So, what would be an example of that? All right, so here's a few examples. Ultimately, if you end up going ahead and taking, I believe it is a quarter cup of flour, you go ahead and you take a packet of yeast. You go ahead and you use a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of sugar. You're going to go ahead too and make sure that you get a little bit of olive oil in there. You're going to use 12 ounces of water. All right. But ultimately, with what you're going to be doing at that point, you're going to go ahead and take some cheese mesh, put it over your, you can use a glass bowl for that specifically because you need to give it a chance to breathe. All right. Ultimately, at that point, you're going to start getting your dough to go ahead and start rising and everything. Then you're going to go ahead and after giving it, I believe, 15 minutes to breathe, then you could go ahead and put it in the fridge for half an hour to go ahead and simmer down the yeast expanding, effect. But afterwards, then you go ahead and you're going to, for example, to make your sauce, usually 4 or 5 tomatoes. Gonna want to make sure it's fresh. All right. Not to mention that if you got the option of fresh basil, freshly grown basil, you go ahead with that. But you go ahead and you dice your tomatoes into your cubes. All right. Then you're gonna use the side of your knife to actually crush your tomatoes. All right. Ultimately, then you can, after going ahead and slicing up your actual basil, you're gonna go ahead and you mix them together. That's ultimately going to be the base of your sauce. All right. Now, they now have garlic butter, which ultimately actually makes a lot more fun for cooking. Anyway, ultimately, if you know how to braid, like I know how to braid, you go ahead and, do like, for example, a French braid designed throughout the entirety of the outer layer of the dough, so that way you go ahead and make yourself a garlic knot crust, you know. With that though, you go ahead and take yourself some mozzarella sticks and, go ahead and put them inside of your braids to go ahead and make them stuffed crust. All right. You could also go ahead and take pepperoni slices, wrap them around the actual mozzarella sticks, and have them inside your crust. Then you're going to go ahead and take yourself a little bit more butter, take yourself a little bit of garlic butter, put it around the actual edging where, it's going to be your actual crust. Then you go ahead and take yourself some jarred garlic, make sure to, be generous around the actual crusting area. You're going to go ahead and make sure to get yourself a good brand of mozzarella cheese, usually circular. You could go ahead, cut those into slices, keep those into bricked out slices so that way they expand out, but so that way to save, you know, cost efficiency, you can also get yourself some shredded mozzarella, put it on top. All right. Now, when it comes to your pizza tray, you can go ahead and make sure you put yourself a little bit of flour, a little bit more olive oil, on the actual pan. All right. Middle rack. 350, 20 minutes. right there. Stuffed crust garlic, not pizza.